And now I have the privilege to introduce our speaker. Professor Rademacher is the director of the FAW Institute, which is the Research Institute for Applied Knowledge Processing in Ulm. It's a new, let's say, version. It existed already when we met for the first time and we collaborated. So now this M denotes the new mode of operation of the Institute, which has a leading role in Germany and all over the world, actually. He holds also a faculty position for databases and artificial intelligence at the University of Ulm. He is a member of the Club of Rome and of several national and international advisory boards, as well as president of the Senate, or let's say it in German, Senat der Wirtschaft, Senate of the Economy, actually, in Bonn. He is also president of the Global Economic Network in Vienna and vice president of the Ecosocial Forum Europe in Vienna. He has a number of important scientific awards. The Scientific Award of the German Society for Mathematics, Economics and Operations Research, 1997. Laureate of the Salzburg Award for Future Research in 2005. Laureate of Vision Award 2007 of the Global Economic Network for the Global Marshall Plan Initiative in 2007. And by the way, in the recent weeks and months, we spoke quite a lot on Marshall Plan ideas in Greece, and you may have the chance to say something on this after that. He's a member of the Rotarian Action Group for Population and Development in the German section, member of the German National Committee of the UNESCO for the World Decade Education for Sustainable Development, starting from 2005 and going to 2014. So from this point of view, the optimum selection for a next worldwide expert in sustainable development, whom we thank very much for all his fruitful suggestions and as regards the structure of our MSc, and we will certainly benefit from his presence today, and he will certainly come again and even possibly teach in this program, which we would very much welcome, because we need his help in order to offer something that would be interesting for the audience in Greece and the countries around. After all his presentation, I would like to give him the floor and ask him to make his presentation.
Professor Moussopoulos, thank you very much for the nice introduction and for the invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me and a great pleasure to be here with you and to spend some time with you on the issue creativity, innovation and sustainability. So this is a number of important concepts very much associated with our human nature, and this is in particular obvious with the concept of creativity, which means our ability to create something totally new out of what we knew before. Now you may have noticed I'm in computer science working in artificial intelligence. So we try to understand what makes up the intelligence of humans. And of course, we try to have intelligent machines. We try to understand creativity also in order to have creative machines. We try to understand consciousness, of course, also eventually to have machines that have something like consciousness, or we want to have machines that have something like emotions, or may at least they pretend to have emotions. Or let's say you have a face on a computer and this face shows emotions. Of course, you would not expect the machine to have emotions, but at least the machine can behave as if it had emotions. And eventually, of course, you will ask yourself, does a human has emotions? Or is a human a system that is able to pretend it has emotions? I only want here to make the connection between working on the artificial intelligence in close interaction with trying to understand the human interaction and intelligence, and of course that then leads you also to the animals. So we then also ask, what is with the chimpanzees? Does a chimpanzee has emotions? Does he has consciousness? Does he has creativity? There is now a lot of indications that chimpanzees can be quite creative. And certainly chimpanzees have emotions. Certainly chimpanzees even can manipulate their emotions to manipulate other chimpanzees. So the interesting observation we make is, on the one hand, that the higher animals are not so different from us. The other point is that a lot what we thought is special for us is also possible with computers. So I think in this interaction going from a chimpanzee to a computer and the human in the middle, we learn a lot about intelligence and consciousness and emotions and everything. Now, for everybody in the room, it is clear that creativity is one of the basic abilities of humans, and it is very important to influence our life. But it has to be very much distinguished from innovation. Many people think if you are creative and have new ideas, then you can do innovations. And I understand you here, you are building a science park and you want to have incubators and you want to bring innovations into the market. Now it's very important to distinguish between creativity and innovation. Creativity is you have the new idea. Innovation means you bring the new idea successfully into products or services that you are able to sell in markets. That is a very much different issue. It's very difficult to make services and products out of ideas. It's very easy to have ideas. It's very difficult to do innovations. Particular, you always have take into account that there are others that don't like your innovation because it's their business. And they will be very tough defending their place. And they would put all types of stress on you. And if needed, they would try to steal your innovation. And if you go for patents, it's very expensive to patent ideas. And the other guys often have hundreds of patents, which might or might not have to do with your idea. And they will go to court. And they have lawyers, and they can pay lawyers, and they have money, and they have time. And they bring you into every trouble you can imagine. So, innovation is where the money comes into the play. And it really becomes interesting if you're successful in innovation. But it's much, much harder to be creative. On the other hand, if you see humankind as a system, then the innovations are the core for development. And to the extent that economists are sitting here in this room, you may know Schumpeter, the Austrian economist. He spent all his life on the role of innovation for the progress of humankind. And it's true, successful innovation makes the difference. Of course, this is now the systemic point of view. From the point of view of humankind, you need the innovation. the question who will do the innovation is not so essential from a society point of view. It may this guy or that guy, and with power and without power, and with tricks and not with tricks. This is on the individual level, and there's winners and losers. For the system is not so important. For the system is important that in the end we have the innovation. You can say in a certain sense, humankind is composed of those who are the winners of the innovation process. And the one with the most powerful innovation, he will always tell the others what they have to do. And the others have two choices. Either they adapt very fast to what the innovation winners tell them to do, and then they can stay. And if they're not able to adapt very fast, then they will go and they will have no children, and where their children would have sit, now will sit additional children of those who did the innovation. So in the end, you only have the guys who did the innovation. Either the others take over or they are eliminated. This is a very cruel system. Innovation is cruel in historical terms. Innovation is also very cruel in markets. Schumpeter said this is destructive forces. Yeah? They said innovation is a destructive device. If you look for the Red Indians in North America, they lost their country. And if you look to the Indians in Middle America and South America, they lost their country. Yeah? The white man took over, and hardly anything remains of those who once owned the country. This is why the innovative force of the white man was so much superior that the others had no means whatsoever to resist. And that means they just eliminated. And in markets, it's pretty much the same. And it's interesting to see what huge companies had been there 20 years ago, and now there is nothing left of them. They're just gone, yeah? They were so successful, like Kodak is the most recent one, yeah? Kodak was so powerful in photography, but they missed the trend to digital, and now they're gone. That's it, yeah? This is the power of innovation to do destruction on the level of a company and the individual. But for humankind as a whole, it's the progress. Now, I think it's interesting to look into a few numbers to better understand that progress. And I usually start 8,000 before Christ, because that is an important moment in the history of the humans. This is the moment when agriculture was invented, which was a very huge innovation. Up to that time, humans were collectors and hunters, which is a very interesting type of making your living. Because they go and collect, but they never have to see it. It's in a sense a very comfortable state of life to be a collector and a hunter. Particularly for male, it's very interesting to be a hunter. Yeah? You can do a very concentrated job, and afterwards you earn the fruits of being successful. Yeah? And then you have a lot of time to sit in the sun. Yeah? So they had a quite reasonable life, and they hadn't to fight with the euro, they hadn't to fight with taxation, they didn't need to have approval in such MBA courses and so, yeah. They didn't have all those problems. It was a quite relaxed time. But there's a price you pay for it. The world can only sustain 20 million hunters and collectors. Only 20 millions. Now, if you see it from the point of view of those 20 millions, I think there is not a particular problem in only being 20 millions. Why should you be more than 20 million people? So as long as you not make it more than 20 million, there is no problem in only being 20 million. if you're 7 billion and want to go back to 20 million is a certain problem for most of the 7 billion. But as long as you not go beyond 20 million, there is no problem in being 20 million. So I think they had a quite relaxed time. And I think if humankind at that time, taking sustainability into account, could have made the decision whether they want to invent agriculture, maybe they had come to the conclusion they better don't do it. Now they at that time didn't know that they made this invention and that there was a decision to make. Yeah? They, by the way, didn't know that they at that time were humankind, and they didn't know that they were 20 million. They didn't know all that. We know all that. They didn't know all that. So they not even knew they had to do a decision, so they didn't do a decision. So at that time, things just happened. It's interesting to see how the numbers develop, and there is, because we're in Greece here, North Greece, yeah? Take the time when Alexander did the Persian Empire and killed it, yeah? It's a very important time in history, and maybe Europe never developed where it developed if you not did it at that time, yeah? And at that time, yeah, what do you think how many humans lived at that time? Starting from 20 million, 8,000 before Christ, we now do a step of almost 8,000 years. What do you think, how many humans? Around 160, 170 million. And if we go to the time of Christ, year 0, 200 million. This is now Indonesia. This is now the Philippines. That was the whole globe, 200 million people. The Roman Empire had 60 million of the 200 million. The Chinese had 60 million at that time. So the rest of the world had 80 million. This was all that was there. And even if you go to, let's say, 1500, when the Europeans started to discover the Americans, at that time, the number of people still was, let's say, in the magnitude of 700 million. Very small numbers if you compare it with today. So I can see the numbers increase, and they increase, there is a mathematical law behind this increase, but it is seen from today very slow. But it is important to understand that this increase in numbers is a direct consequence of creativity and innovation, and only because of the innovations we had in technology, the innovations we had in agriculture, and the innovations we had in political structure, was it possible to feed always more humans and to make it from 20 million to 700 million, which seen from 20 is still a big number. And the issue is always, how can we bring about the enormous amount of food and water and space and habitat we need to support so many people. And remember, if we only hunters, collectors, we can only feed 20 million. So we need the very elaborate organization of an always more productive agriculture, supported by always more innovative technologies and always better regulatory systems to feed so many people. Yeah? That is the reason why innovation and creativity is at the core of human development. Now, I think from your education you are all familiar with the phenomena of exponential growth. So in a sense, if things double and double and double and double and double, the pattern is always the same, it doubles. But when things always double, in a sense, all the important things happen at the end. So we usually take the the analogy of a lake. Take a lake and you have roses on the lake, and every night the roses split and double. So one night later you have double as much roses than the night before. And then you sit on the moon with a big glass and you try to see what happens on the lake. And let's assume that goes for years, and it doubles, and it doubles, and it doubles, and it doubles, and you look, and you look, and you see nothing, yeah? There is no roses from the moon. The interesting point is, 10 nights before the whole lake is covered, 10 nights before, only 1/1,000th of the lake is filled with roses. And 5 nights before the whole lake is filled, 1/32th of the lake is filled. There's almost nothing on the lake, yeah? And then it goes, the next night is 1/16th, and then come 1/8th, and then come 1/4. And one night before the whole thing is done, half the lake is filled. And the next night, the lake is full. So in a sense, everything happens at the end. If in the end you just don't look for a few nights, then a lake that was empty suddenly is filled. So in a sense, you cannot learn in the history what happens if you approach the limits. The essential issue is the limits of systems if the systems grow exponentially. And this is what happened with our number of people. It is, in a sense, the mirror of our successes. And now the following numbers are interesting. In the year 1820, for the first time there were 1 billion people. And in 1965, there were 3 billion people. But today there are 7 billion people. So we needed only 45 years to jump from 3 to 7 billion. And in the year 2050 will be 10 billion. So we will add 3 billion more. Now you have to see this dynamics against the size of the European Union. We sit in the European Union. It is, if you want, our supranational home. And we some 450, 500 million people. But now keep in mind that until 2050, 6 times as many people will be added to the world population than the Europeans can bring into the game. At the moment we have in India additionally 10 million people every year. Now India is already filled. There is 1.2 billion Indians. But every year they add 10 million. If you tell this a person from Austria, he will get nervous. Every year 10 million. They will add 400 million by 2050. The Africans add 25 million every year. They will add 1 billion until 2050. They will double from 1 to 2 billion. So the biggest issue we are confronted with is this enormous increase in people, and nobody has any idea what to do with so many people. Particularly how they should make a living, and where should be their homes, and where is the water, and where is the food, and where is the IT, and where is the cars, and where is the planes, and where is the football? Where is that for 3 billion more people? Particularly in a situation where at the moment 3 billion people live on less than $2 a day. Now compare that with the Greek situation. And now imagine 3 billion people below $2 a day, which is something like €1.60 a day. There is 1 billion people with less than $1 a day. And now we add 3 billion more people. Now, it is obvious that this many people create an enormous stress on the resources and on the environment. And we now have 3 big issues. You can also say we have 4 big issues. We have the economy. The economy must run, and the finance system is part of the economy. But then we ask, how is the social situation? How is the environmental situation? And all this is connected to cultural issue. How is the cultural balance situation on the globe? And this all is translated into sustainability, and now we have the most important concept we are talking about, and in the presentation you always saw those 3 circles. And then the one circle is the economy, and one is social, and one is environment, and then that is sustainability. However, the question, of course, is what is meant now with 3 circles? Because, and this is now very important, and I hope this is something that you learn in your education. Never believe anything. And never trust in words. Because this world is organized in a way that words are often used to disguise what is really the intention. Huh? So if people talk about sustainability, then maybe this is the people who created the most unsustainable situation possible, but they pretend that they fight for sustainability in order that you allow them to be as unsustainable as they were. And if they talk about justice, all they are interested in is not justice, but they keep their privilege. So words are very tricky. There's a big difference between what is said and what is the intention. This topic has an enormous importance, and I recommend that you look into the recent books of George Soros. Now, Soros is interesting insofar as he is an Hungarian mathematician who went to London and then to the States, and he is one of the most successful guys in financial speculation. But he is also the guy who always said that this system is crazy and that this system is a system of stealing and that this system has to be much better regulated. Of course, then the people say you cannot trust Soros because he is so successful in stealing. If he talks about stealing, he is a stealer, so don't believe him if he talks about stealing. But Soros says, no, I'm very successful in stealing because I understand the system, but I'm honest enough to tell you that you should not allow such a system. And I would prefer a world where this is not allowed to a world where it is allowed, but if you allow it, I will do it. I will do it in order that not the others do it and I'm the one who loses. So I will defend my position even in the wrong system, but I will tell you that it is wrong and I argue that you change it. Now, the most important idea that Soros brings into the debate is the idea of self-reflexibility of all social and economical and political sciences. I think this is a very important point to put some effort in. There is a big difference between, let's say, natural sciences and engineering and social sciences and economics. For the following reason. In natural sciences, the typical thing is that you repeat experiments. So you understand the truth in the sense that there is, let's say, a mathematical law of physics, a law on gravitation, And the law on gravitation, you can do the experiment and you do it in any physical class everywhere in the world, and everybody understands how gravitation works because you can repeat it all the time. In the social field, it's totally different. In particular, if you take history as a science, you could say the human development is past dependent. The history of what happened determines what happens next, and you can never repeat it. It is a path. It is past dependent. And you just have one experiment, and you can never repeat the experiment. Because once humans understand something, they change their behavior. Yeah, this is the main point of Sauvage concerning the financial system. He says, as long as people don't understand certain dynamics, they behave as they behave. But if somebody like me discovers something, all the other guys will immediately try to copy me. And once they copy me, I cannot do what I did before, because now they're more intelligent than before, so I have to invent a new trick. So the old trick wouldn't work anymore because they understand it. That is also the issue with measurement. Many people say you have to measure things, you can influence things. Yes, it's true. But as soon if you measure something, humans immediately begin to manipulate what is measured. So once you take something you measure as an official stick to let's say, put taxes on, then the humans will immediately manipulate what you measure. So in this sense, the whole system is reflexive. It is reflexive in the sense that intelligent beings adapt their behavior to what they understand and how they are regulated. And this puts, in a certain sense, limits to the objective possibilities of understanding something. So in the social sciences, there is limits in the possibility to understand something objectively. Now, if you take Popper, you will all be familiar with Popper. Popper is the philosopher who would say, okay, in these fields, in a sense, we can never prove anything, but what we can do is falsificate. So we can show that something is not true. And the progress of our science is that we develop theories, and then we always look into all examples to see whether we found a counter-example. And as soon as we found a counter-example, then we change our theory. And the quality of our theory we have today is that it survived all the examples we saw in the past. But with finding new examples, we might again have to change our theory. Now comes the most important point that Sauvage made. He said, but all this, the Popper paradigm to understanding the world always better, only works if at least we as humans or as scientists, we want to find the truth. The truth in the sense that we want to get the best understanding how the things are to our ways of understanding the reality to the degree objective as is possible. So a very important point, particularly for scientists, is a certain honesty in what we try to do. Do we really try to understand how things are? Or do we want to implement into the brains of others an idea how things are, even if we know that they are different? That is what is called manipulation. So is honesty our, let's say, leading principle, or is manipulating our leading principle? Now it is quite recently that most people learned that in politics we have a big change. And that was when the US went into Iraq. And they went into Iraq claiming that there were nuclear facilities, and almost everybody knew there were no nuclear facilities. And there was a big debate. And at some point, the US responsible woman with the name Rice, she said, "You all these second-class guys, you all run around with your idea of truth. You want to understand the world as it is. You should get one point. We change the world as it is while you try to understand the truth. And then eventually you will understand that there is a different world, and you will try to understand the truth about that different world. But while you, meager guys, try to understand this new world, we will again change reality. We will change reality. We will create reality. The issue is not to try to understand reality. The issue is to create reality." Now, once you're there, you're out of the Popper paradigm. Then there's almost nothing anymore you can do. I think luckily with Iraq, it turned out in a way that was different than intended by those that created a new reality. Yeah? And in the end, we noticed the new reality was still the old reality, and they didn't create a new reality. And those that insisted on truth, in a sense, were proven right. And I'm happy that it is like this. For a scientist, would be almost unbearable, a world in which looking for truth is no longer the issue. So, coming back to sustainability then, of course the real issue is sustainability. But now you have to embrace sustainability in a complete sense. And it is certainly not the case that, let's say, you have 3 sections of your society, and the one care for the economy, and the other care for social, and the third group, they care for the environment. Huh? This is how you have it in many governments. You have a ministry for economics, you have one for environment, you have one for social. Often you have one for finance, and then you have one for culture, and then you have one for education. Yeah? And these guys, they insist on their special point of view. Luckily, you have a parliament and you have a minister president, and in a sense they are responsible for the whole thing, and they have to bring together the pieces. And particularly the parliament when it's about money. The ultimate truth about words is when it comes to money. Because you can spend the dollar only once. Yeah? So in a sense, priorities have posteriorities as a consequence. That is the moment of truth. And we would say you can only have the economy, the social, and the ecology as a bundle. And you cannot unbundle it. You know, in telecommunication, we always try to unbundle so that you can differentiate between the service and the physical transportation. But if you have ecological, economical, and social, is no way to unbundle it. If you reduce taxes, then you cannot easily increase social spending. In a sense, if you want to increase social spending, you have to increase taxation. There is no easy way to have win-win. Yeah? Many people would like to have win-win. They say, oh, sustainability is wonderful. If you do it right, you make more money on more social and better environment. Yeah, would be wonderful if this works. Yeah? But it is really not what you see in reality, that if you want more environmental protection and more social balance, and that at the same time you can have more economic successes. No, you can make a lot of money by stealing on the environment and by stealing on social capital. And the best is you do not do in your own country. The best is to live in a country with a wonderful environment and then steal on the poor countries and their environment. And you have a social protection at home, but please not somewhere else on the globe. Yeah? So stealing is very, very important for those guys who always tell you have win-win. They now do all carbon budgeting. they all now have sustainability reports. They all report to the standards of the Global Reporting Initiative. Now they even have qualified stamps on their reports from Ernst & Young. Yeah? You can say they are now certified, qualified sustainability guys. But the interesting thing is the global CO2 emissions increase every year in spite of all those reports. And last year we had the highest emissions ever, and we had the highest acceleration of emissions ever in a world where all those big guys have now their sustainability reports. So it's very important that you learn to distinguish between words and what really happens. And for instance, it is a very nice trick of the Europeans to bring their production to China and then declare that we reduce CO2. And then we say, these Chinese, they increase CO2. But the Chinese are the problem. And then the Chinese say, sorry, we didn't increase, it's just your emissions that is now done in our country. Then we say, keep your mouth, you take our money, you're guilty. Huh? Then the Chinese say, okay, still, per person, we have still much less emissions than you have. Yeah, we say, per person, but you so many people. Yeah, would you not be so many people, you could have much more emissions per people, but with so many people doesn't work. Then the Chinese say, yeah, but international law says every human has the same right to find his happiness. Yeah, we say it's also in our constitution, it's right, but some people are equal and some are even more equal. Yeah, this is us, we are even more equal. Then the Chinese say, why are you more equal than we? You know, we say it's easy. We invented the car, we invented the plane, and we invented penicillin. And so be happy that you can have it, but don't assume you are allowed to use it to the degree that we use it, because if you use it to the degree that we use it, everything is kaput, and because this is not possible, we sell it to you, but under one condition, you can only use it to the degree that it's not too much for the globe. Then the Chinese say, I never saw a contract in which when we buy a car, is written in the contract that we are not to allow the car for the full extent. And as you want to sell cars, yeah, ask yourself, do you want to sell cars or not? And in the end of the day, we want to sell cars. And then the Chinese have a good idea. They said, let's stop all this discussion. We now agree to disagree. You know, it's a very important principle. We agree peacefully to disagree. And then we do it democratic. Because you always tell us to be democratic. And now we propose to be democratic. We do it now democratic. We ask ourselves what is allowed and what not. And bring all your people with you. And we bring also all our people with us. And then we do a fair democratic vote on this issue. And then immediately the northern countries will never talk about democracy anymore. Knowing that if it is democratically done, they need not even go to vote. Huh? But it shows again how empty our words are. Because we always talk about democracy, but we hate nothing more than the idea that any global issue would ever be handled globally democratically, because then our privileges are gone. And so that makes the situation so difficult. And the question is, can we have a sustainable world for 10 billion people? And then the question is, ask yourself, are the Bangladeshis included? Are the Indians included? Are the people in Ecuador included? Are the people in Kenya included? Or are they out of the picture? Do we sit in one boat? And do the Indians sit in the same boat than we sit? The real challenge of sustainability is to raise billions of people into a decent living. at the same time protect the environment, at the same time protect the climate, and at the same time keep our standard of living at least as high as it is. And then we, of course, at the issue that is the core of the new program, namely green growth. And we have now in Europe, we have a debate about degrowth. And the people say, oh God, this growth doesn't work, and we will destroy the environment, and we have to stop it. But it's one point to say in Europe we have to stop growth, and it's a completely different point to say India has to stop growth. China has to stop growth. Malaysia has to stop growth. They will never stop growth. Their only interest is get out of this poor situation. And they will do everything to get out of it. And the question then is, can we then have a growth that gets India and China and the Philippines and Brazil into reasonable, let's say, European state of affairs, while protecting resources globally? And then the question is, what economic system would do that? And we are now really central in the issue of sustainability. But is sustainability global? It's ecological, social, cultural, and economical at the same time as a bundle. And then we have to take future generations into account. Not just those who are around, but also those who come. And we have to embrace sustainability in full, and then think about the options we have to make this a program for the world for the years to come. Now you may have noticed I'm from the Club of Rome, and the Club of Rome 40 years ago published the book Limits to Growth. And so this is an important year for the Club of Rome, and in 2 months in the Smithsonian in Washington will be the big event to honor 40 years Limits to Growth. And at the same time we are working on the next 40 years. How will the world be in 52? And that is very much the issues that are at stake here. What is our perspective for the year 2052, and what does it has to do with the economy? Now you may remember one phrase about the US presidential elections, and the one president said, it's about the economy, stupid. Yeah? At the end of the day, many people decide from the point of view of the economy. And the question is then, what kind of economic system could do the job? And I assume everybody in this room is in one way or other educated about the economy. And the economy is a big issue with the financial system, with the financial crisis, and for Greece in particular. You understand what the economy has a power. And 10,000s of people that lost their jobs here, they lost it because of the power of the economy. The economic system is a very brutal system. It is a system that brings the goods and services, but it's also very destructive if you're in the wrong place. Now, a very important issue is, what is the philosophy of the people who invented, let's say, the market radical position about the economy, that they think that all that would work? And they did a very big invention, and you all will probably know it. It is the invisible hand. Is there somebody in the room who didn't hear about the invisible hand? Now I ask the other way around. Who did ever hear about the invisible hand? Now really all hands should go up, because afterwards no hand went up. At least there is some hands going up, so assume at least some of the people here heard about the invisible hand. Now the invisible hand is a marvelous concept, and I would say it's also a marvelous marketing instrument. Because the issue of how do we get into, let's say, an ethical, acceptable, sustainable solution would require a lot of action from humans. And humans hate that, particularly those who make money. And what they love most is if somebody tells them, the more money you make, the more you bring about sustainability and the more you do for the public well. Yeah, you would agree that this is wonderful, yeah? You're only interested in making your money and in adding your money and adding your money, but the more you add your money, the more God is with you and the more you are the one who promotes the public welfare, and everybody has to salute you because you are such a big contributor to the public wealth. The public well-being, yeah. Now we laugh about that, yeah. But this is the core story that every student learns in economic education. It's the hardcore of the market fundamentalistic position. It says the more successful you are, the more you contribute to public welfare. And if you are a Christian of the Protestant type, now you are more orthodox, but if you would come from the northern countries and if you would be a Protestant, they would even tell you, and the more you make the money, the more you come to heaven, because by giving you all this money, God shows you that you're on the right track. Now let me add, this is a very powerful philosophy, and that the West conquered the world has to do with this philosophy. It's a very strong philosophy, and it is not completely wrong. But the invisible hand needs, let's say, preconditions under which the invisible hand does what it should. And when Adam Smith invented the invisible hand, he knew that. And he was not only an economist, he was a moral philosopher. And in his most important book about the moral philosophy, he described the conditions under which the invisible hand does its job. But the market fundamentalists would never talk about that. They only talk about the invisible hand. And you learn at this point how you manipulate. Manipulation is usually not about telling something that is totally wrong, because this everybody would notice. So when you manipulate, what you say must be almost right, but a little wrong. And it must be so little wrong that exactly the contrary happens from what you say. So the real art is by, let's say, mobilizing a small difference to change the pattern. So you talk about the invisible hand, but you do not talk about certain things that are prerequisite for an invisible hand to do what it does. And by forgetting about these little things, the invisible hand does the contrary from what it is expected to do. This is the real tricky form of manipulation, by not saying something. There is many ways to manipulate the truth, and there is a lot of money paid to do that. With the invisible hand, it's not different. You may have heard about Stiglitz. He is a Nobel Prize winner in economy. And Stiglitz recently said, I'm a Nobel Prize winner in economy. I run around now here 50 years of my life. I try to see the invisible hand. I never saw it. Maybe there is none. Now, this was an interesting question of a Nobel Prize winner. I would say there is an invisible hand always. But the question is where it shows. The invisible hand can show here and can show here. And in order for the invisible hand to do what it is expected to do, it has to show in the right direction. If it shows in the wrong direction, the invisible hand creates absolutely the contrary from what is told about the invisible hand. In a sense, you could say the invisible hand is a mirror of the regulation of the economic system. If you have a good regulated economic system, it will be regulated as such. If you destroy the economy, you cannot make money and they will send you into prison. Remember, the regulation is as such. If you destroy the environment anywhere on the globe, and they get you, you go into prison, and you certainly don't make money. And you can only make money if you employ a lot of people, pay them reasonably, and pay your taxes. If under such a system somebody is successful as an entrepreneur and earns a lot of money, is wonderful, because you know he earns a lot of money, he protected the environment worldwide, he employs a lot of people, he pays reasonable salaries, he pays social security, and he pays a lot of taxes. Now wonderful. I assume this guy, being successful, helps the common good. However, if my economy is regulated in a way that I make even more money if I destroy the environment somewhere else, skip out my workers, have only low-paid people, and go to tax havens and never pay my taxes, then I think with this guy, you will not foster sustainability and you will not bring about the public wealth. You will steal on others and you will steal on society. So whether the invisible hand shows in the right direction or not is immediately the consequence of the regulation of the economy. So this is, in a sense, the answer to the open question. Can we have a green growth? Can we have a reasonable future? Yes, we can, but we need the right kind of regulation. And in times of globalization, we need the right kind of global regulation. And at the core of the global regulation must be that we protect the environment everywhere on this globe and not only at home. And of course, that we invest in social capital everywhere on this globe. And that we pay taxes and not use tax havens. So yes, there is a clear understanding what we have to do globally. And we could achieve sustainability, but only if we have the right kind of regulation of the global economic system. It means we need innovation in global governance, and at the same time we need dramatic innovation in products and services. So, products and service innovation in the sense of green growth, to have more goods and services for always more people on the globe. This as a consequence of a regulation that takes care that the global economy helps and not destroys. Now, if you ask me what the main problem is it the engineers to do the innovations, or is it the politics to do the right kind of global governance? I tell you, the real problem is the political problem. We have to do the final step in global governance, and that is harder than to invent the new technologies. If we had the right kind of global governance, our engineers certainly would not have a problem to invent the right kind of technologies. Now I use a few minutes to close with the issue of global governance, and I go to the European community and say a little bit about the financial crisis, because it's a good example. If you would want to understand what is needed globally, you just have a view on the European community. Because it's the only successful example of supranational governance we have. And eventually, we should have something like the European Union worldwide. And if you ask how that practically would work, you would take the WTO regime. At the moment it has 145 states involved. You take the International Monetary Fund system with the World Bank. At the moment you have some 185 states involved. And you take the United Nations with its climate and social policies, and you integrate those three frameworks into a kind of super framework, which would then very much be of the type of the European Constitution. This is something you need globally. There is no place on earth where we did it so far than in Europe. Of course, we did it not just voluntarily, we did it after the most disastrous historical experience at the end of World War II. We did it only when we were totally down, yeah? But still, we did it. The question is, what is the most important principle we follow in Europe? And I come back to the invisible hand. In Europe, we have the idea that within Europe, it is not allowed to make money on destroying the environment. We are not allowed to destroy in any European country the environment to make money. We have a very strict environmental regulation. That doesn't mean that there is not people that try and trick even this regulation. But on the level of regulation, it is not possible to make money in the EU on destroying the environment. However, the European Union companies are very good in destroying the environment somewhere else on the globe. So part of our income is on destroying the environment somewhere else. But within Europe, we don't do it. The same is with child labor. We are not allowed to use child labor within the European Union. Again, we take advantage from child labor somewhere outside the European Union because the WTO allows it and even enforces it that you use it, if it is there. But in Europe is forbidden. In Europe, we have a clear principle of everybody in Europe to be educated. Because we want to be a science, knowledge-oriented society that is premium worldwide, and we know this is only possible if we have a good education of all our children, of all our young people, and that is, of course, the reason why you sit here in this room. Yeah? You are privileged to be in a zone where education is self-understood and is to a considerable degree financed by the state and public money. Of course, there is additional private money, but the main financing structure is public money, and that is good that it is so. Yeah? But the question is whether we would ever get such a system worldwide. And this question very much hinges on the question of a proper taxation. Taxing according to economic power is one of the most important principles if you want to have a reasonable world. I need not go into the issue that you obviously as a country have some problems in this point. Yeah? You should not have those problems being member of the European Union, because being member of the European Union from the ruling point of view implies that you have a reasonable taxation system. However, the biggest issue with taxation is that global economic processes now try to avoid national taxation. Half of the international business activities is channeled through tax havens. This is small islands which are ridiculous as states. And you ever wonder how such an island can be a state? And in the end, you understand that very big powers want those ridiculous states to have a place where they can redeclarate what would to have been taxed otherwise at home. This is one of the biggest business on earth. Half of the global economic activities are this way taken out of taxation. And the money we lose there is the money that is missing everywhere, is missing in your country, is missing in Nepal, is missing everywhere. Yeah? It is the money that is, in a sense, stolen from the nation systems by guys that do supranational business. And the most ugly point of that is the global financial system. And this is a system that is totally intransparent. And whatever there is rumors about intransparency in Greece, it is nothing in comparison to the intransparency of the global financial system. The global financial system has managed, with a market fundamentalistic propaganda, that the state doesn't know what goes on. And their propaganda is, we like casino. There's a casino close by here. Yeah? They say, we are close to, we like a casino, it's plus minus zero. Yeah? What the one loses, the other wins, and what the one wins, the other loses. So actually there is nothing, yeah? Our business is like a form of zero. It's a very interesting form of zero, yeah? It adds up to zero, so there is no reason for taxation. This is called the casino capitalism. And I always say the notion of casino capitalism is an insult against the casino. Yeah, a casino is a much more reasonable place than the casino capitalism. Because there's one nice thing about casinos, and that is that the probabilities are okay. If you go for black or if you go for red, the probability is essentially 1/2, and it's the same, and it's true that it is like so. If you go into the global financial casino as an ordinary person and play against an insider, if you go for red, the insider can make it that the probability for black is 65% to win. And if you go for black, he can make that the probability for red is 65% to win. So he will always do a 15% share without doing anything in real business, and he will cash this 15% for free, and he will not pay tax on it. He steals on the other by using asymmetric information as an insider in a big lottery. And by the way, that is the issue that Stiglitz got his Nobel Prize for, the asymmetric situation in this kind of global games. So the point is that because of that intransparency, certain guys could hide that they had insured $60,000 billion in credit default swaps, which is a kind of insurance. But the interesting thing about that insurance was that it did everything but not insure. Now you will immediately understand this is a very interesting business, because you collect fees for insurance, but you don't insure. In a sense, you have only inflow but no outflow. They collected 2% on 60,000 billions of dollars for not insuring them. They had in their bag 1% of that amount, and annually they cashed 2%. They cashed $1,200 billion for not insuring people. You know, this is far beyond the GDP of Greece, which a handful of guys collected for not insuring. But nobody knew because the whole system was totally intransparent. Now we have all the mess. And in the end, at the end of all this mess, the state had to take the debt for the cashing of those guys that are gone with what they cashed. And now the state having to carry all that debt, Greece has a problem. So it's clear why you have a problem. Of course, you have also a problem in making use of the particular options that the euro brought to Greece. But if it wouldn't have been for the world financial crisis, you would not have a problem at the moment as you have it. Still, it wouldn't work on the long run. What happened? That you had the euro, but for instance, not a really working taxation system. And in this sense now, the situation is much clearer, and I think there's essentially two options. You must make a decision as the people of Greece whether you want to stay in the rigid euro zone. It's a quite rigid zone, which means you have to do enormous efforts to have access to many goods and services. But the question is that what you want in life? The question is, what is the reason to be on this earth? What is the way of living you want? There is a kind of, let's say, Prussian discipline in creating goods and services. And there is now some Koreans and some Chinas that are even worse than the Prussians. Yeah? They put now the pressure on us. I just come back from Nepal, one of the poorest countries in the world. You should go into the Nepalese schools, private schools. 40% of the children go into private schools. They speak English from the 3rd year on. They are better educated than the children in Germany, but they have a discipline from the morning to the evening. Yeah, they educated machines to eventually be able to participate in global business. The question is, do you want to do that? Do you want to do that as those that sit in this room, that you go for higher education? Do you want this as a Greece population? You have one advantage. You have a quite pleasant climate. You need not go into every stress. Yeah? However, if you do not want to go into this stress, in a sense you cannot stay in the Eurozone. Then still there can be a lot of help that you get into a reasonable state outside the Euro. And with the ability to adapt the currency interchange level, you can always adapt to whatever happens in the Eurozone and happens here. You cannot do this when you're in the Eurozone. Within the Eurozone you can have a lot of help, but essentially you have to go onto a level of organizational discipline that is typical if you want to have this premium performance. It is very hard for your life, and it means institutionally you have to have a very tough compliance in taxation, but also in all kind of public services. And on a European level, we understand now we have to go in the direction of a fiscal union if we want a strong Europe and if we want a strong euro. And the fiscal union must implement money transfers between states, as we have now money transfers within states, for instance, in Germany. Yeah? But this goes only with the right kind of compliance system. Otherwise, it cannot work. So the crisis brought about a better understanding and certain decisions that have to be done. And I think the best is to go in direction of fiscal union. But you will also understand that I say this is the best for the world. And this is the last point I want to discuss. I mean, this is, if we talk about Greece, then we can talk about the world. And we can ask, why do we not get the financial system regulated? Why do we not get global transaction taxes? Why does it not work? And in the end, you will see the reason at the moment is the US and Great Britain. And you see the most powerful state living from the financial sector. And there is no transfers between states. So if we would now require the US and Great Britain to cut back on the financial sector, the GDP of these states would deteriorate. And the president would have to stand before his people and say, sorry, we did the wrong thing. We have to become much poorer. And imagine Obama standing there, yeah? I mean, everybody knows what trouble Obama has now. Now imagine he tells the US people we have to change our system and we have to get poorer. They say, young men go into insanity. Yeah? We send the US Army. So the point is that given that all states are specialized, and of course, like in the Roman times, the most powerful states concentrate on money printing, because that is the most interesting business. Yeah? The others work and you print money. And if you have the biggest army, then you can make certain that for your printing you get goods and services. There's a wonderful business. Now how would you convince the US and the British, as a result of their former empire, to give up this premium position and go into production? And how do you do the transfers to make that possible in a world where many people hate even to debate transfers between states? Now we from the Club of Rome, we always argue for transfers between states, because it is a solution on the national level and it's the only solution on the global level. But how do you communicate that? And how do you find partners for that? This is the ultimate issue. The Club of Rome would say the issue is global empathy. If you can develop a global empathy, you can solve these problems. If you cannot develop a global empathy, is also okay, then this world will go a rough route, and we call this route the Brazilianization of the world. Then the whole world will develop into a two-class society, and you will lose the middle ground. The typical thing for Europe, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, also the US, is a middle ground. We have middle classes. But on the long run, we will have a global middle class or no middle class. It is not possible to have a middle class in Europe and the rest of the globe goes into these brutal fights. It's not possible. It's also not possible to keep a middle class in Germany if you lose it in Greece. The point is, the things are so connected that either you make it globally or you don't make it. I think that is a strong motive to go for the balanced way, for an ecologically, socially regulated global market economy that would then be the economy for the green growth we need. I hope we can make it, and I hope that the courses you will present here and the programs you have will help to make young people understand what is at odds, what are the alternatives, and what can we do to create this balanced world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Rademacher, for this fascinating talk.